Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at a really powerful small form factor PC from ASUS known as the ROG G22CH. This is one I've been wanting to get my hands on for a while, and if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know I love my small form factor PCs. And this one is an absolute beast when it comes to performance. I've been testing it out at 1440p and even 4K. Really amazing what this thing can do. And keep in mind, they do offer a couple different configurations, and the one I have here isn't too off the wall. Now, when it comes down to it, you can actually configure this with a liquid cooler right out of the box and up to a 13th gen i9 CPU. So this is actually a 10-liter mini gaming PC. It's not the smallest gaming PC that we've taken a look at on the channel, but when it comes to performance, this is definitely trumping most of the other ones that we've tested here. And just to give you an idea, I recently built this mid-tower gaming PC on the channel. And yeah, I mean, as you can see, that G22 is much smaller. So it's not going to take up much room on your desk or even under your desk. And personally, I think the design they came up with looks really good. We do have a little bit of RGB on the front, and they do offer one with an RGB panel that you can actually attach. This one didn't come with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a sleek looking mini PC. When it comes to I/O, up top here, we've got a 3.5mm audio jack, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A ports, and 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C. Aside from the 4 display ports and HDMI on the video card, around back here, 1 HDMI 2.0A, 3 3.5mm audio jacks, 2 USB 2 Type A ports, and 2 more USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports. Like I mentioned, they do offer a few different SKUs in this model. You can go with an i5 up to an i9, but with this here, we've got the Intel Core i7-13700F. 16 cores, 24 threads, and a max clock up to 5.2 GHz on the performance cores. And this is the air-cooled version. They also offer a liquid-cooled version with the G22, but obviously you will spend a bit more. This will support up to 32 GB of DDR5 SODIMM RAM. I'm running 16 at 4800 MHz. We've got an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4070 with 12 GB of GDDR6X VRAM. Now, I know a lot of people out there aren't too keen on the 4000 series, but they are great performers when they're put to use properly. This did come with a 1TB M.2. It's a PCIe 4.0 2280. We've also got Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, and located in the bottom, we've got a 600-watt 80+ gold PSU. Now, I personally haven't tested the liquid-cooled version, but this air-cooled version does a great job with this 13700F, and it's actually much quieter than I thought it would be, so I definitely wanted to give you a look at the internals, because this is a real custom setup here. Getting in the unit is actually really easy. We've got a little latch, top will kind of slide right off. Now we can remove both sides, so to just kind of slide right up here. If I can get it, there we go. And on this side, you can see we've got that RTX 4070. This is the ASUS dual 12 gig card. So we've got those dual fans here, but obviously you could slide another card in here if you didn't want to go with the RTX 4070. Maybe I'll wait for 5000 series or whatever they call it. And of course, moving over to the other side, same thing, slides right up. And this is really where all the magic happens with that CPU and the cooler system that they have here. It actually pulls the air in from the side and exhausts it right out of the top here. Now we can remove that fan assembly to get a better look here. It's just 4 screws, and now we can actually see the cooler itself. So we've got 4 heat pipes here going to that CPU block. We can get in here, change the RAM, add RAM. We can add an M.2 SSD if we want to. So upgrading that RAM and storage is actually really easy. And I'm surprised that the heatsink here is so large up top. And like I mentioned, it does pull in that air from the side, pushes it right out of the top. I figured this would be a much louder system given that we're using that 13700F, but it's actually really quiet. And again, they do offer a liquid-cooled version. I would much rather have the air-cooled. That way we don't have that many moving parts. We don't have to worry about the AIO failing or anything like that. And taking a closer look down here, we've got that 600-watt 80+ gold power supply. Obviously, it is a proprietary power supply here, so if that does fail, you'd have to go straight to ASUS to get a new power supply. Or you could rig something up hanging off the side if you wanted to. Up top, we've got that fin array poking its head out right there. All that air comes in right over here on this side, exhaust right up top. And yeah, for them to come up with a design like this, it definitely took a lot of engineering. This is a really clean setup, and of course, we've got a power-hungry CPU and a power-hungry GPU. If we were working with something that didn't need as much wattage, they could go much smaller with it. But I think at 10 liters, this is kind of the perfect size for a nice little 1440p/4K gaming machine. I definitely want to get into some testing here. I want to show you how this thing performs. And by the end, we're going to take a look at total system power consumption, heat on that CPU, and a few other things. But the first game we have here is one that I always like to test since it was released, Forza Motorsports. So I've got this locked down at 60. Personally, I like playing these games at 60. But with the settings here, it's definitely a little weird. If you've got this game on PC, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But right now, we are at 4K Ultra settings, and with the driver updates from NVIDIA and the patches from the Forza Motorsports team, we're seeing some great performance here. And before, when this was initially released, even on the RTX 4070, I wasn't getting great performance at 4K. I had to take it down to 1440. But now we can run at a constant 60, and if I unlock this, we actually get an average of around 82 FPS. Next thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks that I ran on this PC. Geekbench 6, single core 2,559, multi 16,275. So yeah, I mean, it's fallen right in line there. I've seen this hit a multi-core score of around 18,000 in different setups, but with it being limited on the power just a bit, given that we're in this small form factor, I think we're seeing some great performance. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks with 3D Mark, Firestrike coming in with a really strong 35,078. And since we are rocking an RTX GPU, I figured I'd throw a ray tracing test at it. We've got Port Royal. Total score here, 11,081. Not too bad. And of course, I mean, we are off from the 4090, but we're only working with the 4070 here. And the final one I ran was Time Spy, 16,688. I mean, just judging by these synthetic benchmarks, this is definitely a gaming machine. And of course it would be with that 13th gen i7 and that RTX 4070. So let's go ahead and test out some more games. I always love throwing at least one fighting game in. So here we have Mortal Kombat 1, 4K Ultra settings, no DLSS. Now that's one thing I kind of want to stay away from in this video. If I have to enable it, it will be listed on screen or I'll mention something about it. But when it comes to fighting games, you should be able to max out most of them that are on the market right now. Next up, we've got Spiderman Miles Morales, 4K, very high, no resolution scale, so we don't have DLSS, we don't have FSR. Really great performance on this setup, and I knew we were going to be able to run this at full speed, 4K. Even on something like the 6600 XT, we can do 1440 at very high settings. And with this, we had an average of 131 FPS. GTA 5, still one of my favorite games, and I know it's an older one, but I wanted to throw it in here. We're at 4K maxed out in the settings. We got an average of 142 FPS. I personally can't wait for GTA 6 to be announced and then released. Here's the built-in benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. 4K, highest settings, we're not using any resolution scale. We got an average of 83 FPS, and I thought it would be a bit more, given the power the CPU and GPU combo puts out. But I guess this game maxed out at the highest settings really does take a toll on this hardware. Cyberpunk 2077. Now this is one of those games that I did have to take down to 1440p without using DLSS. If I wanted to enable that, we could do 4K. It would be 4K high settings with DLSS set to balanced. But right now, we're at 1440p, ultra, no resolution scale. We got an average of 87 FPS. And the final game we have here is Starfield, and you might notice we are in a city. I just went to Jemison real quick because it really does kind of fall on its face on basically all systems that I've tested this on. Right now, we're at 1440p, high settings, 70% resolution scale. Now this test was just in a city setting because this really does take a toll on all hardware. But playing it side or even indoors, we actually get an average of around 98 FPS with these same settings here. Now initially, going into this without taking a look at the internals here, I was a little worried how that CPU would perform at higher temperatures, but we don't even reach those higher temperatures, mainly because this isn't running full boat. And that's because with the i7-13700F, We do have a base TDP of 65 watts, but it can do up to 210 watts. And the way this is set up, I think we can only get a maximum of around 85, at least that's what I saw. And I didn't mess with any of the BIOS settings or anything like that. But while gaming, we were getting an average TDP on that CPU of around 67 watts. And by the end, we had an average of 56 degrees Celsius across the board, which was crazy. I thought we'd be up in the 80s given how small this unit is. Another thing I always like to test with these smaller form factor PCs is just total system power consumption. So while I'm doing my testing, this is plugged into a kilowatt meter, and at idle, it's pulling around 41 watts. Average with some mixed 4K and 1440p gaming, 302 watts, and the maximum that I could get this to pull from the wall while maxing out the CPU and GPU, 434 watts. Now I'm sure with some tweaking and tuning on that 13700F, we could definitely pull a lot more. But the way it's set up, I mean, we're seeing phenomenal performance when it comes to 4K, 1440p gaming. I really do like this small form factor gaming PC. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. I really appreciate you watching. And if you're interested in learning a little more about the ASUS ROG G22, I'll leave some links in the description. You can head over to their official website. I believe Newegg is selling this and Best Buy. But if you've got any questions or you want to see anything else running on this small form factor gaming PC, let me know in the comments below. And like always, thanks for watching.